I've written a class for which we have some unit tests. This class is called account and it has a few methods. The first one is called deposit, with which you will deposit some money. The second one is called withdraw, with which you withdraw some money. The third one just returns the current balance. And the fourth one transfers a sum of money to another account. We also have a member called mBalance, which represents the current balance of the account. Let's take a quick look at the implementations for this. The deposit function does just a little incrementation of the current balance. The withdraw function does a decrementation of the current balance, but it also checks that you have enough balance. So if you have a lower balance than the sum you are trying to withdraw, then it throws a runtime error. The getBalance method is a simple getter, it just returns the current balance. And the transfer method requires the sum that you're going to transfer and the account to which you will transfer the money to. First, we withdraw the money from our current account and then we deposit the money to the destination account. I've already written some unit tests for that. There's no point in doing it live because it takes a lot of time. We are just going to make these tests better. The first test just tests an empty account. It creates an account, does nothing with it, and asserts that the balance of the account is 0. The second test calls the deposit method of the account with 10.5 and asserts that the balance will be 10.5. The third test does the same thing but then also withdraws $3 from the account and asserts that we have $7.5 left. The next test does something similar. We have a sum of $10.5, then we try to withdraw $300. We don't have sufficient funds, so we check that we throw a runtime error. Next test. Again, we have our account with $10.5. We have a second account to which we will transfer the money. We call the transfer method and then check the balances of the two accounts. And the last test, same scenario. The difference is that we have $10.5 in the source account and we will try to transfer $200, so not enough money, to the second account. In that case, again, we expect that we throw a runtime error. Now you might have noticed that except for the first test, all of the other tests have the first two lines identical. We declare an account and deposit $10.5 to it. You can see that here and here and here and so on. Let's reuse those two lines by creating a test fixture. We'll declare our test fixture by extending this class, the test class from the testing namespace. The first thing that we're going to reuse is the account object. I'm gonna call it simply account. This account object has to be protected so that you can use it in your tests. Let's override the setup and the teardown methods. Before each of the following tests, we want to deposit $10.5. So let's do it. Also, let's add a message here so that we can better see what is happening. Now, just by doing this, nothing will actually happen. In order to use the fixture, we have to replace this test macro with testf, and the first parameter, which is the test suite, has to be the name of the test fixture that we're going to use. Now I can just delete this and it will still work. So everything is fine. Let's continue with the rest of the tests. You can notice how short the tests become. So you can see that the tests are still working. Now let's have a look at the console. Before each test, you can see this message. Let's write a teardown method as well. You can see for each test setup called and teardown called. Just to make things clearer, let's add, for example, a message here. You'll say test body and run again. For the first test, you see these messages: setup called, test body, and then teardown called. One typical scenario which I see is often used with setup and teardown is when you have to create and delete a pointer. For example, when the account variable is a pointer, in the test setup you usually do this. And in the test teardown you usually do this. You usually delete the pointer. So that's the most common scenario I see when you need to actually override the teardown method. You don't necessarily have to do it always. Let's have a look at setup test suite and teardown test suite. These methods need to be static, both of them. And I'm sorry, this is supposed to be setup test case and teardown test case. Now you can see these messages. You can see setup test case called only once, then set up and tear down called for each individual test, and then you can see teardown test case called once at the end. Let's add a constructor and a destructor and see what happens. And add a simple message to each of them. And in this one we'll say destructor called. These messages clearly show what's happening. So for each individual test you have a new fresh test fixture. For each test, the first thing the constructor of the test fixture is called, then setup, then the test body, then teardown, and then the destructor.